I can understand why he was so ticked off. And that ticked me off knowing that happened. Man, I wanted to, I wanted to punch Kelsier in that moment. I did. Hello everybody, my name is Heather and today I am doing the review of Mistborn. If you don't know, this has been probably my favorite book so far this year. I will do a quick non-spoiler summary and then I will get into spoilers because you know what? I enjoyed this book so much. I'm not going to hold back. I'm not going to try and keep it spoiler free. I'm just not. I'm sorry. I will leave a summary though, just for those people who just want to know what the book is about. But mostly this is going to be a spoiler video. Definitely a spoiler video. Okay, so this takes place in a world where there is an evil ruler that is head of the kingdom or empire, whatever you want to call it. This ruler has been around for, or been ruling for at least 1,000 years, and he is evil. He's evil and immortal, and that's where we are. You have the protagonist, Vin, who is a 16-year-old girl who has been through so much in her life and has a lot of trauma going on, and she teams up with this group of thieves to plot to overthrow the Lord Ruler. There are a lot of twists and turns and a lot of character growth, some faster, some slower, but it was so good. Now, that is my brief summary, non-spoiler. So that is just kind of what is going on. And now I'm going to get into the spoilers. Let's move on to the things that I did not like. I don't have a whole lot. Honestly, I sat here for a few minutes trying to figure out what I didn't like. And it was very hard to come up with things. But there are a couple. And one is Kelsier's arrogance that leads to the death of thousands and thousands of soldiers that they had built up to create the army. It was very hard to watch that whole scene and see how Ham even was like, why did you do that? Why did you put false hope into these young men? And even because Kelsier did that and made them believe that Kelsier could give him some magic, gives the army some of his magic, it made them arrogant themselves and believe that they could take on the army of the Lord Ruler, and they lost. So they ended up losing over half of their army because of it. And to me, I just wanted to, I know Ham felt the same way because of the way he acted whenever they were trying to get out there as quick as possible. Ham went out there with the Lord Ruler's army as undercover to find out what was going on. And Ham, it was even like, he was ticked off. He was pretty ticked off. And I can understand. Being in the military, I can understand. He trained those men, and now he's having to sit there and watch them die because of Kelsier's arrogance. And I can understand. I can understand why he was so ticked off. And that ticked me off, knowing that happened. Man, I wanted to I wanted to punch Kelsier in that moment. I did. But it was a great growing experience for Kelsier. He grew from that, and it devastated him actually having to sit there and listen to those young men die on the battlefield and needlessly give up their lives. And he still was able to go and save the rest of the army because Vin shifted his train of thought from going to save those men to going to save the men on the battlefield to going to save the rest of the army that are in the caves if they're still there. And he was able to at least save some of the army instead of everybody dying completely. So that was one thing I didn't like in that series. I can understand because it did create growth, character growth, but at the same time, I still wanted to punch Kelsier and I still didn't like it. So that was one thing I didn't like. Another thing that I didn't like was how Vin just accepted Elend immediately, almost. It was almost an insta-love type deal, and I didn't like that, especially how distrusting Vin is, and how she still doesn't even really trust Kelsier or any of the other group, or anyone else in the group, but she's willing to just almost immediately believe and trust Elend. And even after the warnings of Sazed and Dox and even Kelsier himself, she still gets angry and says that he's not like other nobles. It's true, he's not like other nobles, but she didn't really know that. She barely knew him. She only met him like 3 times at this point, and only for a few times at the ball. It just, to me, was just, it didn't make sense. I felt like she needed to struggle a little more in accepting him, instead of having one scene where she's crying and gets angry with him and blurts everything out, and then he's like, no, I don't do that, and then she's like, okay, good, we're good now. No, I really feel like Vin needed to struggle more in that aspect, especially because she is Ska, and the things that Noble do to the Ska is completely wrong and despicable and disgusting, and I feel like she needed to struggle more in that aspect instead of just being like, oh, you don't do it? Okay, cool, let's go. And then also, it's kind of hard to believe that even though Elend was very kind and had a soft spot for the Ska and the way they're treated, that he just immediately accepts that Vin is a Ska. To me, I feel like he needed to struggle a little bit with that too. And we don't see that. He's just like, she's Ska, yay. But those are really the only 2 things that I could really find and in my head that I really just didn't like. Those are the only 2 things that I didn't like. What I did like, now there's a whole lot. I enjoyed this whole book, but I will do a few of these because I have a lot written down, and there's a lot. One is, I loved all of the characters. I loved how they were all so different, but they all cared for each other, and they joked with each other and made fun of each other about just the way that they are. And they each had their own pain, and you see them come together and want to overthrow the Lord Ruler because of the stuff that they went through, and they don't want their children and their grandchildren and so on and so forth there to experience the same thing. And right along with this is character growth. The character growth, especially in Vin and Kelsier, it was really, really good. With Vin, you see it's a little slow, but you see her begin to open up and trust a little more at a time. Except with Elend, we're just gonna completely throw Elend to the side. But with the group, Kelsier and his group, you see her open up a little more at a time. And like I said, her character growth is a little slow, but that is absolutely understandable with all of the mess that she has gone through. And I feel like, to me, it was a good pacing, and I enjoyed the fact that she just wasn't like, okay, well, now I'm with this good group of people, now I don't have to be afraid anymore. I think that would have been a cop-out. So I enjoyed the fact that it was a slow progress of her taking a step forward and then taking 2 steps back and then having to redo it again and again. And I enjoyed it a whole lot. Her character growth was amazing, and even in strength, where she goes from being so weak at the beginning to where she grows quickly and stronger, and even ends up beating another Mistborn and killing that lady as well. I think that was pretty great. The character growth, awesome. Now with Kelsier, you see in the beginning he's very reckless. He just jumps into things and doesn't think about what he's doing or how it affects everybody else, the consequences of his actions, none of it. He just doesn't think about it. He just does it because he feels it's right and he's gonna do it anyway. And honestly, not a bad way to be, but you also have to think about the consequences of your actions, and he does. He sees those consequences in several areas. Like in one, he sees the consequences of his arrogance with the army and how that turned out, and he was so distraught after that, and that actually made him grow and stop and think that, okay, well, my actions don't just affect myself, my actions also affect other people. And then he also sees, you also see character growth after the incident with him and Vin trying to break into, I can't really remember, it was just a building that they thought there was treasure hidden there, and there wasn't treasure hidden there. It was just a bunch of obligators there lying in wait for them, and the obligators ended up going after Vin and almost killed her. Would have killed her if Sazed didn't arrive in time just to save her. When Vin was caught and almost killed, it tore him up so bad, and honestly, you see in the book, he starts to think of Vin as a daughter. He does. He even at one point says that Mare always wanted a daughter, and man, that broke my heart. Absolutely broke my heart. He starts to see and think of Vin as a daughter, and to see her almost killed about does him in, and he actually starts to slow down, and even the others notice the change in him and comment on the change in him, and to me that is some amazing character growth. Probably the last thing that I'm going to say about what I like, because I have so much written down, it would be so long if I kept going on, but I'm just gonna say I really liked the ending of this book. All of the pieces started falling into place. I had my heart absolutely broken whenever Kelsier died, and Vin ran up to him and saw him dead. I always say when I read a book, watch a TV show, read manga, watch a movie, whatever it is, I always say the person is never dead unless there's a body. And if there's no body, they're not actually dead. So if they don't find a body, they're not dead. And there was a body. They had Kelsier's body, so that means he's actually dead. And that makes me sad. Makes me so sad. But then you see it is revealed what he did for the cause, and he always planned to die. He always planned that he was going to die for the cause so that the Ska would rise up against the Lord Ruler. And he did. He succeeded in dying and causing the Ska to rise up against the Lord Ruler. And then you have Vin fighting. Well, first let's just stop and talk about Kelsier fighting the Obligator. That was amazing. He finally figured out how to kill an Obligator, and that was great. And the fight was amazing. And then it was the Lord Ruler shows up, and Kelsier dies in one blow, and that kind of sucks because it was just like, you didn't even put up a fight. He didn't even have a chance to fight. He just dies. Okay, moving on, the fight between Vin and the Lord Ruler. You have Vin, who's captured, and then she gets free, and then she decides, you know what? Forget it. I'm going back to this place. I'm going to do this. I don't have a place after Kelsier died. I'm going to go do this. And so she goes back to the place where the treasure is supposed to be, and she actually finds out that's where the Lord Ruler lives. He actually lives there, and he's actually a really old, shriveled up man, and is like Sazed, and can store up magic and use it all at once to make himself look young, which I kind of figured as it was going on, and Sazed was explaining what a keeper is and his magic powers, how it's different from allomancy, but I digress. You have that, and then they start fighting, and then you see Vin almost losing, and then Kelsier's brother shows up, who we previously thought died, but he didn't die. See, this kind of got me messed up a little bit, because it was like there was a body, but he wasn't dead, but he's an Obligator now, so he has those metal things in his eyes and all over his body, and he killed all the other Obligators, so that was good. That was good. So we have Vin, who's still fighting the Lord Ruler. I think his name is Marty or Marshall. I think it's Marty. He fights, or he's killed all the Obligators, and Vin is struggling, and she finally pulls out all of the metal out of the Lord Ruler and flings them away, and the Lord Ruler starts shriveling up, and at the end, right before he dies, he says, "You don't know what I do for all of you, what I've done for all of you," or something along those lines, and it's like, what? Excuse me? I mean, it was kind of foreshadowed a little bit with the journal that they found and the darkness and all of that stuff. And you find out that this guy actually killed the guy in the journal. And to me, that was just, okay. That was an interesting plot twist. I did not see that one coming. I just thought that the good guy eventually just over time became evil, because a lot of people do when they have power. And it wasn't the same guy. It was actually the guy that didn't like the guy that wrote the journal, and so he killed him off and then took his place as the ruler. So we have that is the end, and then you have everything. Actually, I'm going to say one more thing. I really enjoyed Sazed in here. He was honestly one of my favorite characters. Between Sazed and Kelsier, I even enjoyed Hammond. I honestly, the whole crew was just amazing. But Sazed and his wisdom and the way he poured out into Vin's life and helped her come to grasp with learning how to trust people, and it was so good. Even the conversations between Sazed and Kelsier were great, where he's trying to help Kelsier find, I mean, he does the same thing with Vin also, but you see these few conversations where Sazed is trying to find a religion for Kelsier to believe in, and it's just amazing. And Kelsier's trying to understand them and trying to figure out what to believe in, and it's just, it's good. I enjoyed this book so much. I suggest you just go out and read it. And if you've read it before, just go out and reread it again, because I have a feeling once I get through with it, I'm going to end up going through it again, because it is just, there's so much that I feel like I missed and I want to go back and see what I missed. I enjoyed it. I know this was all over the place, but you know what? I can't really do much about it, because there's just so much that went on in this book. And I was trying to tell you everything that I enjoyed about it, but really it's just the whole entire book. It's the whole entire book. You just need to go read it if you haven't. And if you have, let's talk about it. Leave me some comments and tell me your favorite part and your least favorite part of this book. Or actually tell me some things that you realized that I didn't realize. Like, I understood that Sazed was a keeper, and I saw the similarities between what he does and what the Lord Ruler does, but the Lord Ruler also uses allomancy and all of that. Did you realize that? Because I did. I connected the dots. But is there something in there that you did? And also, all of the things that Kelsier did, he did on purpose to lead up to the point where he dies. And it's, you see, that's his plan all along, and it breaks your heart. It breaks your heart so much. Well, it broke mine anyway. So yes, let's talk about it in the comments. Let me know your favorite or least favorite part of this book. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye.